Hello, everyone, and welcome to 100% You, a podcast which is all about discovering who you're truly meant to be and becoming the best version of yourself. I'm your host, Bari, and I've been on the self development journey for the past 14 years and spiritual journey for the past 12 years. In today's episode, we're going to talk about fears. It's a topic that we already spoke about, but I feel like it's such an important reminder for all of us. So, this episode will be very short and simple, just a reminder for yourself that you have it saved every time you need it. So, let's start with today's episode. So, when you feel stuck in your life and you really don't know what you need to do, what's the next step? You feel overwhelmed. Maybe you feel like no matter what you're doing, nothing is working. Maybe you have some kind of repetition in your life, situation that you really don't want to face, you're facing again. And you feel kind of stuck with where you are. So I had this conversation with a friend actually yesterday, and after trying to uncover things that she's experiencing, we talked about her fears. And that's when we both understood that the reason she's stuck is not because she don't know what to do. It's not because she really stuck, but because she has a strong fear from a specific area in her life that she just keep resisting to. And we already talked about this in the past about fears and the reason we need to face our fears. But I really want to remind all of you that the faster you will face your fears, the faster you will get what you want. And the reason for it is think about it. As I said, we talk a lot about energies. So think about, I always like to give you the example of container of a box that you have. So let's say you have this wonderful box that you want to fill with new energy, with new things coming inside your life. But there's energy that is blocking your way towards getting what you want. And this blocked energy is your fears, okay? Because when we have fears, that means we have a lot of energy going towards something. We have resistance. What does it mean that we have resistance and fear? That means that we have a lot of fears towards something specific. Let's say I have a fear of putting myself out there and being recognized. On the one hand, I really want success, but on the other hand, I really fear of being out there and that people will see me. Now, sometimes we also understand our fears and we feel like we can overcome those fears and still be successful because we have so many other maybe examples of people that succeeded without showing their face or doing different kind of stuff. But everyone eventually is different. And this is something you need to understand. There's so many examples for so many people doing something that you want from different ways. But the only way for you to know what truly meant for you is asking yourself, what are my fears? And mainly in situation in your life where you really want to get something. And sometimes when we really want to get something and we don't get it is because we have resistance and fear that is blocking our blessings. So let's go back to the example of the container. So we have this container, we want to fill it with new energy and have something new in our life. But there is fear and resistance that preventing us from achieving and getting what we want. Now, the first thing that most of the people do eventually when it comes to really strong fear they have is try to find any other way to do it without facing this fear. But once you understand that the faster you will get through this fear, the faster you will get the results that you want. And when I say facing this fear, maybe you have fear of death, maybe you have fear of snakes, maybe you have, I don't know, random fears. It doesn't mean that you need to die in order to face this fear. But if, let's say, you have a fear of doing something because you have a fear of dying, maybe you do need to do this thing and face and feel the entire fear in your body. If you have a fear from being seen, you need to go through and maybe you need to start posting more and be out there no matter how hard it's going to be. And the first time you're going to face the fear, I had a conversation with a friend that she understood that her fear that is stopping her from getting what she wants is actually the fear she has from being seen. And when we understood this, we understood that she really wanted to post content for a really long time, but she really afraid from it. So before she started sitting and writing the content, I told her, listen, it's probably going to take you a few good hours to write a piece of content. Don't be afraid of it, because that's what it's take. And that's actually what happened. It took her a few good hours to write a small piece of content. And because this is something she's so fear about. But when you do it for the first time and you actually feel the fear, you face the fear and you go through it, everything you need to remember, the more uncomfortable you feel, the faster you need to go through the situation. And the faster you will get used to this feeling of feeling uncomfortable, the faster you will get where you want and you achieve everything that you want. Because to get where you want, you need to become a new identity, a new person, a new version of yourself who don't have those fears. Think about the version that has it all, that you want to become, your future self. What kind of life does this version of yourself has? Think about what action does this version of yourself take? What kind of thoughts, what kind of behaviors, what kind of actions? And at some point, you will realize that many of the things you're fearing of, your higher version don't have those fears because she faced them, she overcome them. So at some point, you will need to go through these fears. I can tell you about myself that this past year, I had so many challenging conversations, especially with family. Very, very hard conversations that I really don't wanted to face. Situations where I felt all the fears, everything. I sometimes I even didn't know what kind of fears I have, but I just felt very bad inside. And I remember I had one conversation with my father, and I was so scared to talk to him about something specific in my life. It was the thing I was so scared about. And I noticed that for 1 week I was shaking, like my entire body was shaking. I was crying constantly just from thinking about talking to him about this thing. And for me, it was obvious that I don't need to talk to my father about this situation. It was so obvious because I was shaking. I was so afraid. I didn't see any reason why should I do it. And I remember after 1 week that I realized that the fear that I have, I'm more afraid of talking to my father than experiencing what I'm experiencing. That's when I realized that in order to go through what I'm going through, I need to talk to him, because I understood that I have such insane fear to do this step. I was shaking. I was literally shaking for 1 week. I couldn't sleep. I barely could eat and talk. I was really like, for 1 week, all I was doing was just crying and shaking just from thinking about doing this conversation. And it took me 2 or 3 days to from the decision that I made from I need to speak to my father, because I understand there's something very scary here. And I really believe that the more resistance we have towards something, that means that we need to go through it and we need to go fast. So that's what I did. It was one of the scariest conversation I had in my entire life, probably. I couldn't speak, so I wrote a letter and I just let him read it. And it was so scary, but I just knew that I need to go through it. I felt like I had an outer body experience because I just didn't felt like something is grounding me, and it was really hard. But the moment I did it, I knew it was the right decision to do. It was hard for a few days, for a few weeks, for a few months even. But I realized this is something my soul need to go through in order to get what I want. And I had the goal of what I was aiming for to get. And I knew that in order to be and become that identity, I didn't feel like I need to go through this conversation and more conversations. But because I noticed I had a fear there, I realized this is something part of my soul purpose and I need to go through it really fast. So that's what I did. And today, looking back a few months ago, first of all, I'm so proud of myself. And I know that I became a completely different version after having those conversations. And everything in your life, think about it. What version of yourself you became after you faced fears? Because from even like the most practical point of view, you want to become someone else, you want to have new identity in your life, something needs to die. And in order to keep the old version of yourself in the past, you will need to go through some kind of things. And this is where most of the people fail, because it feels uncomfortable. It feels very uncomfortable. But the only thing you need to remember is just you need to go through it. That's it. There's no shortcuts. That's what most people don't understand. But the shortcuts that you can take is to understand that in order to become that new version of yourself, you need to go through this pain and fears and just go through them as fast as possible. This is the only shortcut you're going to have, is just facing the fears as soon as possible. And as everything in our life, I feel like this is also a muscle, because when you face fears for the first time, it's going to be terrifying. It's going to be terrifying. Also, the second time and the third time, every time it's going to be terrifying. But once you understand the concept of why you're going through this and what's waiting for you on the other side, this is what's waiting for you on the other side of it is probably the most wonderful things you never thought you're going to have in your life. Once you understand this simple formula of you just need to go through and experience the fear, experience it in your whole body, to feel it, to be present when you have the fear without any distractions, without being on your phone, without I don't know what, and finding, different substitute or whatever. You just need to feel the fear inside your entire body and be present when you have it. That's when you let go of this fear and you break it. That's the only way. And it's hard to understand it sometimes, but to break your old version and grow a new version, you must face those fears. So I say, and I love to say it all the time lately, especially, that our fears are our greatest compass. You want to know where you need to go? Ask yourself, what do you fear? It's that simple. What is the greatest fears you have right now? That's where you need to go. Just jump into the water and go do it. You feel stuck? Ask yourself, what am I afraid of right now? Maybe you don't have a job right now and you're really afraid to stay with nothing, and you're looking for jobs, although you really don't want to look for a job. Maybe you need to feel uncomfortable for a second without having a job and feel this fear. Maybe you're really afraid of being alone. You're always been in relationships and you have a strong fear of not being in a relationship. And when you experience breakup, instead of being in that uncomfortable situation for a second, you go and look for another partner. So maybe that's where you need to stop and face the fear of feeling uncomfortable of being alone. Everyone has different challenges. You need to understand where your fears are and look at them as your compass of something you just need to go through and feel it for a second instead of jumping and looking for the next thing. Because we're really used to sometimes find distractions that help us to not see what we need to do, be on social media, do a bunch of different stuff. Everyone has their own habits of how to distract themselves from feeling what they need to feel. So ask yourself and be super honest. What am I trying to distract myself from of feeling? And what do I actually need to feel and overcome in order to get where I want? And just go and do it, no matter how scary it is, because on the other side, a new identity, a new version of yourself is waiting for you. I hope you liked today's episode, and I'm going to see you next week. Bye.